So let me start with the first question. So this is a good one. I think a lot of us face as we get a little farther along in our careers and we're trying to figure out how do we continue to offer a reasonable resume. So it says, how do you effectively display your experience in resumes and cover letters when you have 30 years of diverse and relevant experience that won't fit in the space generally allowed? Yeah, this is a common problem as you get past kind of year 10 in your career. So the general rule of thumb is try to stick to a one-page resume if you have like 10 years or less of experience. So if you're pretty new in your career and you don't have a ton of experience, you should be able to make it all fit into one page for your resume because nobody really wants to read multiple pages. It's a little bit different for academics and research scientists because they list like all their publications and things like that. That's a slightly different use case. If you have more than 10 years and you're kind of going up to 15, 20, 30 years, and I'm like that too. My resume would be really long if I let it cover everything. You can go to 2 pages. So 2 pages is fine to be able to do that. You still want to prioritize the first page because the reality is most people aren't going to scan past much beyond that. And so the basic recommendation is try to focus on your last decade of experience, unless you're a career changer. And so that's a slightly different kind of bit of feedback I'll give. But in most cases, if you've been following a progression in your profession and working pretty much in the same industry, in the same field, try to focus on the last decade of stuff that you've done. And then you can have something that says, additional experience, and you can have bullet, bullet, bullet. So rather than calling out every single company, like if I had every employer I ever worked for, I'd probably have like 45 employers, going back into my old history pre getting into tech. So I don't bother with that, right? That kind of stuff is like, this is before I got into tech. I'm not even going to bother with it on my resume anymore. I'm just going to focus on the most relevant experience. And you should be doing this with everything on your resume anyway. So all the bullet points that you put under an employer, you really should only have like 3 to 5 bullet points, and they should be very impactful. They shouldn't be verbose. This isn't meant to be like reading a novel, right? And so you want to take the experience that is absolutely most impactful, most impressive, most relevant for the specific job you're applying to. So you may have potentially 25 bullet points you could put for working for a specific employer. Some people have worked like for Microsoft, for example, for like 20 years, and they've changed jobs and they've done lots of different stuff, but you don't want to list 20 years worth of bullets and stuff that you've done. And so you just want to focus it on those few accomplishments that are most relevant for the job that you're applying for. In some cases, you may want to switch from a chronological resume, which is what most people do, to a functional resume. And so this is a really important, I think, if you're a career changer. It's really important if you had a big gap in your work experience. So if you took like a 5-year break or a 10-year break, and some people did, right? Then you may want to switch to a functional resume that just talks about, here are the main areas where I have strengths. I'm a leader, I do statistical analysis, I do whatever. And then you can, under those bullets, have the relevant experience and talk about the employers that relate to that functional expertise. And so you can play around with that and see what works best for you. But that's the trick when you have a ton of experiences. Trim it down to the last 10 years. You can go to 2 pages if you want to, and definitely focus stuff on the most relevant experience and most relevant skills that apply to that specific job. The same with a cover letter. So you talked about a cover letter too. Same with the cover letter. Every cover letter should be specifically tailored to the job you're applying to, right? And you're going to want to emphasize things both in your resume and your cover letter that match to the job description. So if they, for example, in a job description, keep talking about innovation, we need an innovative leader, we need somebody who's going to disrupt the industry, you should speak to that. You should focus on that. You shouldn't talk about your operational expertise, like, oh, I'm really good at keeping the lights on and get more revenue out of products, which is great, but not for that specific job, because what they're asking for is, we want somebody to disrupt the industry. We want somebody that's going to have tons of innovation they're going to bring to it, right? So you have to really think about, what are they looking for? Build a resume, it doesn't get rejected. Oh yeah. So that is good question. So the question was like, what do I do to make sure I build a resume that doesn't get rejected by the ATS systems? So the ATS systems are definitely looking for things that they can scrape, things that are very cleanly formatted. So if you do something that's a very complex resume and it's got all kinds of fancy formatting, it may not get scraped cleanly by the ATS system, which is trying to extract information from it so that it can be put into a database and people can look at it. There are tools you can use to simulate that. So you can submit your resume, upload like a PDF of it or whatever, and see what comes out the other side. So there are a lot of resume companies that do this. There are a lot of other kinds of career companies that do this, where it's like, see what you look like after you put it through an ATS. And that way you can tune it and tweak it and say, oh, that whole section broke everything. Because maybe you built your resume in Canva and maybe it's all graphical, which is great. It looks wonderful, but maybe it doesn't get scanned very cleanly by an ATS. And so that's something to think about. I've talked to a lot of recruiters who claim the ATS doesn't do a lot of screening for keywords and things like that and doesn't reject people. And then I've heard other people say, well, yeah, it sure does. So this is where the matching is important, the keyword matching. So look at that job description, look at what they're asking for, and you want to include some of the keywords of what they're talking about. You don't want to just copy paste because then you're just keyword stuffing your resume and cover letter, but you want it to match so it looks like you are a relevant candidate for the experience that they're asking for that position. So another question that came in, this is a good one. It's a tough one. How do I manage knowledge hoarders? Basically, how do I grow in my role when I can't access the information needed to excel? So this can be a problem when there's a bit of it's either an individual's problem, so it can be a one-off thing that you bump into, or it can be a cultural problem. So if there are companies where knowledge hoarding is rewarded, where somebody who has all the information tends to get promoted, they tend to get raises, they're seen as the go-to person. There's also a tendency for this to be a problem when people are similar levels within a company, so they see themselves as competing, which they are. I tell people this, it's like, not everybody can get promoted, not everybody can get the big raise, so it is a competition. You see more knowledge sharing when there are multiple kind of levels between people. So more senior people are more likely to share information with somebody 2 levels below them and see that as a mentoring experience or being able to coach people and help people. Sometimes peers will do knowledge hoarding. I worked with somebody who was a knowledge hoarder. They wanted to be the person you had to come to get everything, and they would only dribble out enough information for you to get the job done. But it's like, I'm the owner of all this, and I'm the one who mediates the relationship. You see some of that with relationship hoarding. And I think some of us have seen that, those of us that work in design, product management, where you want to talk to a customer and the salespeople are like, no, 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 you can't talk to the customer. If you want to hear from the customer, go through us. That's too valuable of a relationship for you to go directly. You're going to screw it up. You're going to damage it. And so I've been in companies where they said that. They're like, yeah, if you have a question, give it to me. I'll ask the customer and then I'll come back to you. So, I mean, that's a form of knowledge hoarding. It really is. So you have to understand, am I dealing with an individual, and this is kind of unique, or am I dealing with a more systemic problem? This is a cultural problem. With an individual, you can try to work with that individual, and if necessary, you could have a mediated conversation with the management, and say, hey, we're not actually collaborating as much as I would like to. And so I always recommend that people do joint escalations. I don't like solo escalations. I really don't. That becomes a whole battle of they said, you said. And so if you do a joint escalation, say, can we go talk with our management and figure out how to resolve this collaboration problem together, right? Can we put it on the table and just solve this together versus go complain and then they're complaining? I don't like that stuff. I never liked it as a leader. I always made people get in the room together and have a conversation about it. The other thing you can do is either proactively do it yourself or talk with people who are running the operational stuff, like design ops is a good example of this, people that do IT. Can we set up a way to do regular knowledge sharing in the company? And so there were some examples of this where, and I've seen this, where you can ask a question in Slack. And so you can ask the team, hey, does anybody know how to do XYZ? Or does anyone have the data about this company or about these products? And you know the person that you wish would answer the question has that information, but they're not sharing it for some reason. And so what you're kind of doing is subtly putting it out there saying, I need this information. It would be valuable. If somebody can give it to me, that'd be fantastic. So it changes from a system that rewards somebody for being the only person that has the information to being a system that rewards people for sharing information and being a hero. And they start to become somebody who answers questions in public, somebody who proactively shares. They also recommend doing things like brown bags, tech talks, Q&A sessions, everything you can do to put the knowledge sharing out into the public eye so people can see it, because then it benefits everybody also. And now this person that felt like I have to be the center of information, I have to hold this information and hoard it, now sees there's an opportunity to put their knowledge out into the world and to be shared by the company and by the department and be a hero. It flips everything. Now they're actually being rewarded for being very forthcoming and sharing information and helping everyone. So it requires, I think, a bit of a cultural change. And I think that may be something you could potentially do on your own. I've had some folks have said, I'm just going to start doing brown bags. I'm going to start doing weekly or monthly brown bag talks on design topics, tech topics, whatever it might be, to share my knowledge. And then other people are like, hey, can I speak at the next brown bag? So you're going to see people realizing you're getting recognized for this. People are seeing you as a leader, even if you don't have the title, because you're proactively setting up these sessions and sharing information and helping people. And now they want to be a part of it. So I think it kind of flips everything around and creates a really good kind of ecosystem for this. So another question that came in, what is a good strategy for developing content for engagement as well as passive income? So I often talk about this. I think I just shared something recently talking about the power of writing and putting your content out there. And anybody who's been in my accelerator, like Josh and Charlie have, they know I talk about writing. I get tired of me talking about it. But I write on Medium, I publish on Substack. I now have 3 different newsletters. I'm writing a book. I'm doing all this stuff. Content is the new business card, right? And it is an opportunity when you write long form content to have something more impactful and more meaningful to say than you can just cram into a tweet, right? Or even a tweet thread, which has a little more information, but it's still not the same as writing an article or writing a short book or whatever it might be. And so the thing that's nice about this is it serves multiple purposes. This person was talking about the passive income. So there are opportunities to share your content on platforms where you can earn revenue from it, right? Medium as a partner program. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. So Medium as a partner program you can sign up for, and that you start to get paid when people read your article, become a member, and it can actually be reasonably lucrative. Some people are making tens of thousands of dollars from it. Some people claim they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't know. It's never been that huge for me, but it is an income stream for me. Substack is another one. So you can create your own Substack newsletter. There are other platforms for doing this. ConvertKit supports this, of course. And you can create a premium version of your newsletter and then have a subscription for that, right? So it's another way to have some passive income. And I say passive income in air quotes for those who can't see my air quotes, because there is no such thing as fully passive income. There's going to be some upfront investment and development to create something of value that then can generate income after that. You're going to want to continue to monitor that and update it and improve it. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. There are a few things I've created that just joking around once. I created a bunch of t-shirts and I did it and it probably took me 15 minutes and it made money for years, which is crazy, right? So that was almost passive. I still had to put a little work up front, but most stuff requires an investment of time and energy to do this. And it probably always requires an additional amount of marketing energy. It's very rare for something to be a flywheel that you spin and it goes forever. So you got to continue to market it, promote it on LinkedIn, promote it on Twitter. If you want to run ads to it, you can. But yeah, newsletters. I also recommend creating short books. Charlie's written a book, not a short one, but take your content that you've created and put it into a collection. So a lot of people are taking, I'm doing a lot of this too, their articles, and they're basically rewriting them, putting them into a short collection, saying, here's all the information that I have around how to nail a job, from start to finish. And it's all the articles I've written over the last 5-6 years, right? And then I've updated those and made those publishable. So get those out there. You can release that kind of content on something like Gumroad, which is great. I like Gumroad. I've been using it. You can turn that stuff into a course. There's all kinds of stuff you can do to monetize the knowledge that you have in your head and turn it into something that thousands or even millions of people could use, which is fantastic. Because what is true is that everything that you know, if you've been working for a while, and even if you haven't been working that long, everything that's in your head is valuable to someone. And this is what I tell people who say, I don't know what to write. I don't know what would help anybody. Why would anyone want to hear what I have to say? But the reality is there's always someone who's one step behind you on the path. Always, right? If you got your first job, there are college students who are like, how'd you get your first job? If you're a college student, there's a kid in high school who's like, how did you get into that college? What did you do to get accepted? So there's always somebody who's a step below you on the ladder or a step behind you on a path, whatever you want to visualize that as, who could use your advice. And the reality is your advice is way more useful than the advice from some multi-billionaire. Because a lot of people look to those people and it's like, seriously, you're going to make a jump from entry-level engineer at Google to being the next multi-billionaire? So you're taking the advice of Jeff Bezos? He is so far ahead of you on the ladder, that's not going to help you. And I think most people should know that. What you need is advice from somebody who's a couple of steps ahead of you. Because that is your most burning, urgent need right now, is how do I get promoted? How do I get to senior? How do I get a better job at another company? How do I get recognized? How do I start my first business? Whatever it might be, find somebody who's a step ahead of you, or a couple steps ahead of you, right? And so that's who you guys are. That's who all of you are that are listening to this. You know something that is super valuable for somebody that's a step behind you or a couple steps behind you. And so the other thing that most writers will tell you is that, sure, passive income's nice. Yeah, it'd be great to make money from a book. Very few people do. The majority of authors, writers, don't make that much money from the writing. And I think the ones who are being honest said, you should really think of this differently, that your book is your calling card, it's your business card. The things you write are the top of your funnel. So the money doesn't really come from the writing per se, although you might get a little bit. It comes from you positioning yourself as a knowledgeable expert and then offering something, whatever that might be. And it depends on what your goals are. So if you're trying to start up a business, you're trying to be a consultant, you're trying to be an expert at some company, then you're basically positioning yourself through your writing and the stuff that you're talking about as someone that they could hire, or someone they could go work for, or someone they could hire to come in and consult with the company and talk with them about organizational issues or leadership development or whatever it might be. And so it's really a tool. It's a marketing tool to show off your expertise in a way that a tweet never can, or a post on LinkedIn never can. It's just not enough. And so you have a captive audience when you have content like that. They're reading it from start to finish, hopefully. And then they're like, how do I find out more about this person? How do I work with this person? And it's an incredible revenue generator. Ryan Holiday, for example, although he makes a ton of money from his books now, he uses his platform of being a very well-published author, New York Times selling best author, to offer consulting services to other people who want to get published. And last time I heard him on a podcast, it was years ago, he's like, yeah, I charge $5,000 an hour for that. Which is like, wow. He said, my time's super valuable. I'd rather be writing. But because he's an expert and because he has these books out there, that's now a revenue source for him, is to say, I can talk with you about how to position yourself as a writer, how to get published, what you should do to reach your audience, how to find a good editor, whatever it might be that they have as a question. And so that's a very different revenue source. It's not passive income, but it is derived from your writing, right? And then the other part of the question was like, how do I figure out what content to write for engagement? So the thing that I think is best is to spend some time brainstorming all the topics that you're deeply knowledgeable about, that you have unquestionable expertise in. And by expertise, I don't mean you are the world's leading expert on something, because if that was the case, there should only be like 50 books on Amazon. Instead, there's probably hundreds of millions of books on Amazon. I don't know the exact count, but a lot of people are writing a lot of books, and a lot of people are publishing a lot of blog posts and all over Medium. I can guarantee you all those articles aren't written by the number one leading expert in whatever it is. The number one leading expert probably isn't even doing it because they're too busy doing other stuff. You just have to be knowledgeable about it. It has to be something that you can speak to. It has to be something that you feel comfortable talking about. Something that's easy for you to write about because you're just talking about your experiences. And some of that, and I write this way too, is like, yeah, here are the things I did, but these were mistakes that I made that I can help you avoid. So some of the most valuable writing that anyone, I think, that's listening to this could do is to say, I got from point A to point B, but I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And that's just human nature. And I think a lot of what we have to offer isn't like, oh, I have the golden path that's going to take you seamlessly from A to B. It's more like, here are some things I did along the way that I wish I hadn't. These are some stumbles that I made. These are some mistakes I made. This is a time that I was betrayed by a manager I worked for, and I should have seen these red flags. Whatever it might be. That's something you can easily talk about. And it's really the power of storytelling, which we talk about all the time. I mean, people aren't really looking for a really dry operating manual. This isn't like writing a book on Python. This is about sharing your experiences, doing some storytelling, making it very personal and your journey, and giving people advice along the way, saying, this seemed to work well for me. You should try it too, but your mileage may vary. This was a mistake for me. I really wish I hadn't done it. And this is where I was going to talk about this because I just came out of a workshop talking about Chat GPT. This is where Chat GPT can't copy you. So a lot of people are worried. Some people are excited and thrilled about Chat GPT. Other people are worried. They're like, it's going to replace us. It's going to replace writers. It's going to replace designers. And the thing that is going to always be true about you is that you can talk about your personal experiences. You have your stories. And they don't. And artificial intelligence didn't live your life, right? And you have a very complex life. All of us do. We've had a lot of twists and turns in our lives. We've changed professions. We went to a whole bunch of different kinds of schools. We had good things and bad things that happened to us. We all had billions of experiences that cannot be replicated by an artificial intelligence. And if it did try to copy paste, then it's just copy and pasting. It's not its life, right? It's not going to say, oh, and then I went to, IBM and created a review process. It's like, no, you didn't. You're an AI. It's like, you didn't. That's Josh. What do you mean you did that? That's somebody that's a very human person that had that experience who can talk about it, not an AI. So that is the power that you have, is to tell these stories. So I think get all the stuff that you can talk about with ease, because writing's already hard enough work. And if you're going to try to write about something you have no knowledge about, no experience with, you're adding a ton of time to the process, because now you're going to have to learn how to do it, which is okay. Some people do that, but just realize that's not going to come easy. You're going to have to learn as you go and then document the process, which some people do. So I find it easier to talk about things that just naturally you know a lot about. It's easy for you to talk about. Then I want you to think about like, well, who's my intended audience? Because the whole point of writing stuff like this is you want somebody to read it, unless you're doing it as an act of catharsis and you're just trying to get it off your chest, which is valuable. That's why I tell people to journal every day. It's like, get it off your chest and get it out. Put it on a piece of paper, light it on fire if you want to. You probably are hoping somebody's going to read it. So the question is, who are you hoping is reading it? It's just like when you're doing design and creating software or creating a product or a service, it's like, well, who's your buyer? Who's your consumer? Who's your reader? Who's your listener on a podcast? Who do you ideally want? And so that is the $1 million question for you. It's like, do you want a recruiter to hear this? Is that your target? You want recruiters to hear this and say, that's a great person to bring into our company. Do you want a leader at a company to hear this, or a bunch of leaders to hear this and say, that's a good guy to bring in to do some consulting with us? Do you want people who put together conferences to hear this and go, that sounds like a good keynote speaker? I mean, what do you want? So think about that. And don't say just, I want everybody to read it. It's like, that's not going to help you target it, right? What do you want? And then think about what they need. So what is it that they need? What problems do they have? What issues are they facing? So if you're trying to target college students who are trying to get their first job, then their burning thing is, how do I get a return on this investment of this degree? If I went to school and I don't get a good job, I feel like I just burned years of my life for nothing, which a lot of college kids are feeling right now. So their burning question is, how do I take this investment of money and time and get the best job possible? So then you speak to that. Here's how to ensure you do that. Here's how you don't make the mistake I did, which was get a job that was probably too low for what my value was. I wish I'd done this differently. And here's how I could have done that. I learned the hard way. So think about that. Think about their needs and then map those together, saying, I know a lot about X. They want Y. Let me draw the connection between those. And that's how you get good engagement, is that you speak to the problem that they're having. You speak to the need they have, and you say, you're facing this right now. And you speak to the emotional element of it, because people buy with emotion. They read with emotion. And then say, I know you're feeling discouraged right now. I know you're in pain right now because you just spent all this time and you feel like it was for nothing. Let me help you. Let me help you find a way to turn that into something positive. And I know how to do that. I wrote about that. Because then you can do that and solve their problems. You should think about, do you want evergreen content or topical, kind of viral popping content? And maybe you want to do a little bit of both. Evergreen is fantastic if you're talking about a passive income source. If you write something that's extremely topical and extremely time sensitive, then it's not going to be valuable for very long, right? Here are the best things to do to have a good workout when you're in quarantine. It's like, well, we're not in quarantine anymore. That was super useful a few years ago. It's like, hey, what can I do? I'm in quarantine to stay healthy and be active. You get a good pop, enjoy it, but that's not evergreen content. No one's going to go back and read that again, right? Unless we have another quarantine. Cross our fingers and hope that doesn't happen. So you want to try to write evergreen content as much as possible. And that's going to be stuff that are just human truths. We always deal with it. I lack confidence. How do I build my self-confidence? Everyone feels that way. Everyone feels that way. Some people feel that way all the time. Some people feel that way occasionally. How do I manage my imposter syndrome? I got promoted, I have success, and I feel like a fake. I feel like a fraud. A lot of people feel that way. Even the most famous and successful people feel that way. That's evergreen content. How do I find true love? Evergreen content. People are always trying to figure out, how do I find true love? How do I plan for retirement? No one ever feels like they've done enough to plan for retirement. So there are going to be topics like that I think will be great sources for you. I have stuff like that people read. So I write about, how do you find a great job? How do you nail a job interview? That's always going to be a problem for people. And I wrote those like 6 years ago, and people still contact me about those. They're like, I just read your article. I wonder if you could help me find my next job. Let's go ahead and move on, because I know we've been talking for a long time about these, but that answers those questions. I hope that was helpful for the folks that sent those in. All right, let's talk about LinkedIn profiles. So the way I'm going to structure this to help kind of navigate it is, I'm going to start roughly at the top of a LinkedIn profile and kind of work my way down. And that's for two reasons. One, it's a great way to kind of think about the page and the content rather than jumping up and down and all throughout the page, right? The other is, that's the reality of how people are going to read those. A fully loaded LinkedIn profile is a big beast. There is so much you can put on a full comprehensive LinkedIn profile. I wonder if anyone ever reads your entire LinkedIn profile, makes it to the bottom. I doubt it. If it's like any page, I mean, if you look at Google search results, you look at e-commerce, what do they tell you? That first page is gold. And the first few results at the top of the page are gold. That's what people scan. That's what people look at. and they typically decide if they're going to continue or bounce pretty quickly. And I think that is very true for a LinkedIn profile too. So if they're looking at you, they're trying to figure out who you are, what you're about, and what you do. They're looking at the first few things on the top of that page, on that profile, and deciding whether they want to continue scrolling and look at your full experience and things like that. Otherwise, they're going to bounce like, oh, this doesn't seem relevant, out. Even if something lower on the page would have convinced them, yeah, they actually are relevant. If you haven't positioned yourself well at the top of the page, they're making a snap judgment because they're busy and they're trying to move on, and they're trying to look at hundreds of profiles a day, most likely. Some of these people are looking at a lot of profiles. One of my friends just said that her company is hiring 20 to 30 people a month. I mean, it's crazy. They're hiring a lot. She's looking at dozens and dozens of resumes every day, and she's like, oh my gosh, they all look the same. It's just nothing stands out. And I tell people this: your resume is not what gets you a job. I don't care how well it's designed or how awesome it is. That's really not what gets you a job, because they do start to all look the same, and everybody's hopefully getting coached and reading all these great articles online, and they're creating better resumes. And so the same with a LinkedIn profile is like, you better make sure that it actually is relevant and seems relevant right away. So let's start at the top. Now, from what I understand, the background photo that's in the head of the profile, so the header, is only available in the US. And I think that's still true. Because I got a big red warning when I was looking at this, and it said, if you're not in the US, this is an experimental feature that's being tested in the US, and people outside the US can't customize their header profile. So I don't know if that's still true or not. So this feedback may only apply if it's available as a feature where you are geographically. I am surprised at the number of people that do not have a background photo in the header of their profile. So they have the default image that LinkedIn provides, which is very generic and very bland and isn't doing you any justice. It's not helping you at all, right? So you can add a photo if you're in the US and maybe a few other places. It can either be a JPEG or a PNG file, I think only up to 8 megabytes in file size, so it can't be huge. The way you should think of this is like, that is an ad, right? It's a banner ad. That's, if you're familiar with the old web, those are banner ads essentially. And so again, this is always going to come back to, what are your goals with LinkedIn? What do you want to happen when people look at your profile? And some people don't care. I have some friends that are doing so well, they just don't care. They're like, I don't care if anyone ever contacts me from LinkedIn. It's just there if someone wants to reach out and have me speak at a conference. I don't need a job. I never need a job. Don't worry about it. So they may have nothing, or they may have some fun with it. Some people put their pets up there. Some people have an image of the city, whatever it might be, and that's fine. Have some fun with it. I would never leave it blank if you have the choice to not do that, because I think that's important. What I have seen people do, I'm doing this, I know, Charlie, you're doing this, a lot of people are doing this, is they're promoting whatever it is that they do or offer. So in my case, I'm talking about consulting, my newsletter. A lot of people are putting their book. So they have a picture of their book on a background, and it's like, hey, go get my book, right? The thing I will suggest is make sure you look at this on the web, also in the mobile application, because I think a lot of people are looking at LinkedIn through the mobile app, and it condenses everything, right? The width is a lot narrower. When I first created my background thing, it was like, oh, this looks great. And then I looked at it in the app, I was like, okay, my profile photo covers the call to action. It's like, because it goes underneath your profile photo. So take a look at it in the LinkedIn app and make sure that whatever you want to be legible is legible. Because it might be too small, it might be covered by your lovely face. I have seen people, like, for example, I'm looking at one right now as I shared as an example. This person has their book, so it's a beautiful picture of their book cover, and then they reproduce the title in much larger font in the middle of the background image. So you could see, oh, that's the book title. They were the author. Otherwise, as the book shrinks and looks tiny in the application, you can't read the text and you don't know exactly what it is. You're like, why are they showing me this book? Is it their favorite book? You can't see their name. You're like, oh, they're the author. I didn't know that. So you may want to reproduce that if you're going to do something like that, but always test it in the app. Profile photo, speaking of that, oh boy. Some people don't even have a profile photo at all. So I've looked at a few people's profiles, and I don't know if that's because they didn't upload one or they locked their profile down so securely that no one can see it if they're not a connection. So I think there is a setting like that. I know Facebook definitely has stuff like that. I wouldn't know, because like, why do I have a LinkedIn if no one can see it? What's the point? So it's like, get a photo of yourself. If possible, try to get a professional photo taken. A lot of people will do a selfie, which there's a whole article on this, which is why they think, believe it or not, this is an aside, the surge in plastic surgery is due to selfies, because it creates a very strange skeuomorphic lens effect that your nose, the center of your face, looks way larger than it actually does in proportion. So this person did a field of focus with different lenses on a camera, and they said, okay, I want you to see what I look like with a selfie and with the camera at this, this focus, this focus, this focus. It was crazy. And it was so subtle that it wasn't like a crazy funhouse mirror, but in the close photo, the selfie, their nose looked way larger than it actually was. And they said, if I just looked at that, I'd say, oh my gosh, I need a nose job. But I look at what I really look like when someone's looking at me, it's like, I look fine. And so selfies are not your friend. It's very hard to get enough distance and make it look good. Try to get a good photo taken by somebody that's either a professional photographer or a friend that's pretty good with a camera that can really bring out the real you. So this is important. My photo was taken by my daughter. She's also a professional photographer. But because it was my daughter, it was very easy for me to truly warmly smile at her, because we were laughing while we were doing this. And so it's just me. I'm kind of laughing a little bit. I see people looking like a deer caught in the headlights. So they're trying to smile at the camera. They're nervous. Most people don't like having their picture taken. And it doesn't look comfortable. They look really uncomfortable. And so a great photographer, one of the talents of a great photographer is they can bring out the real you. They know how to capture the best representation of you. They know lighting. They know all that good stuff, right? A really good photographer knows how to warm you up and make you laugh and relax and smile, which is important. Because you do want to look friendly. Some people look so stern in their photos, like they're angry and they must be the hardest person in the world to work with. And you have to think about that. This is LinkedIn. People are trying to decide if they want to hire you. People are trying to decide if they want to recruit you and you'd be a colleague of theirs, and you look like the meanest person on the planet. I don't think it's doing you any favors. And I know why some people do it. They're trying to look professional and formal and serious. And it's like, it shouldn't be true, but people hire people they like. It's still true. It's still true. That's why they talk about cultural fit. And what they really mean is, do you fit into the organization? Will you be okay to work with? Are you competent? Are you good at what you do? But are you also somebody that I'm going to enjoy working with? Or is it going to be like pulling teeth every day? There's a great site that I've used. I recommend this every year. They're still in business, thank goodness, this startup. It's called Photofiller.com. So it's all one word, photo, F-E-E-L-E-R, photofiller.com. You can actually A/B test your photos. It's very scientific, So you can put up variations, different photos, like headshot photos. You can test black and white with color. You can test formal dress versus casual dress, big smile, small smile, test all that stuff. And then it gets put into the pool where people basically vote on it on various attributes. So you can put up, am I testing this for business purposes or for social or for dating? There's even dating tests. So if you're active in the dating scene, you might want to try it. But people will look at it and say, does this person look professional? Does this person look friendly? Does this person look competent? Is this someone, I'd want to work with? Is this someone I want to go out with? So you can get quantitative data back. I did this, and that's why I went with black and white versus color. The black and white edged out the color in professionalism and seeming like I was smart, all kinds of stuff. I tested smiling, not smiling. The smile won. This person seems like somebody that would be warm and friendly. I mean, I tested it and said, okay, this photo won. Out of the 6 photos I tested, this is the one that people seem to like the most. I'm not usually a big smiler in photos, and so that was a stretch for me to do that, but it tested the best. I would highly recommend using photofiller.com to test your profile photo. Make sure it's you, make sure you're looking at the camera, make sure you're doing what they call the smize. And so I talked about that in one of the articles, which you're smiling and your eyes are smiling too. So that's the whole, don't just do a smile and your eyes are dead. It's like the podcast, right? Dead eyes. So you don't want to do that. Make sure the contrast is good. I've seen some photos that are kind of washed out and it's really hard to see the person against the background, or the background's too noisy. There's all kinds of stuff that can mess up a photo, but I'd recommend testing it. That's the ultimate thing, right? If it tests well, that's all that matters. Headline text. So this is what basically shows up like right under your name and profile, and also shows up in search results. So this is important. When people are searching for, oh, I'm looking for, director of design, and it comes up with a list of a few thousand people, it's showing who you are, it's got your photo, and it's also showing this headline text. And it truncates it because it can't fit the whole thing, which is 220 characters, right? You should fill out all 220 characters. So I would use it and make it a little more fun towards the end. At the end of it, you can have some fun with it. I put stuff like, oh, I like trail running and weightlifting or whatever. It just kind of humanizes who you are. Fills out the characters. Those are used for search and SEO. So it's always good to use all the characters you can. But because it gets truncated, you're going to want to front load that. So the stuff that starts at the very beginning of that statement is the most impactful. Because if they search for you and it has something at the very beginning that doesn't look like you're a relevant fit, then they're probably not going to click you. And that's the way you should always think about this stuff. Am I going to get a click? Am I going to get a scroll? And that's the way we learn to do things in search. People who work in advertising know this. You're not trying to win everything in the very first step. You're trying to get the next step. So you just want to get that first click in the search results. It says, oh, they look relevant. Well, that's interesting. They're intriguing. And now they get to your page and they read enough to say, still relevant. I'm still intrigued. I'm going to scroll and see what they have to say about themselves. I'm going to scroll and see all about their experience. So you're just trying to get the click and the scroll. That's all you're thinking about. It's a very scientific kind of process. Think about what your goal is with LinkedIn, because this is really your mini elevator pitch. This is a chance to position yourself for how you want to be seen and what you want next. Sometimes I see people put, almost everybody, my goodness, probably 90% of the people put their current role and company. I'm a designer at Google. Well, is that all you ever want to be, is a designer? Or do you want to move up? Are you aspirational? Are you thinking about what you want to be and being more about what you do and the problem you solve versus a title? Because I can tell you, and we all know this, a title at one company is very different than a title at another company. So you do not want to get hired at the title you got leveled 2 levels down into. Google's famous for doing this. Facebook does this. Meta. They hire you like, well, we're Google. So, here you're only going to be a this. You're not going to be that. That's title inflation at the other company. So you're going to be 2 levels lower. Well, if you lead with that, now the company that's looking to hire you is thinking they can get you for that level or 1 level up. And you got leveled down to go to Google. So now you're knocking yourself down the ladder and you're starting over again, over and over and over. So you want to be much more about, what do you actually do? Like some folks I know, I've convinced them, don't say I'm a director of product or I'm a VP of product, you're a product leader. And that can be anything. That could be a CEO. It's like, I'm a product leader, a design leader. And then have the conversation after to say, well, what's the right level for you as you're being approached by recruiting and stuff? Because you know what you'll accept. It's like, okay, I'm a senior manager right now. I'm not going to accept a senior manager job. I'm going to director. And whoever gives me director is going to get me. So I don't want to talk about being a senior manager because that's very different at Google versus Salesforce versus some startup, right? I'm going to talk about being a leader. I'm going to talk about what I am now. I'm a design leader. And so you need to woo me and win me with the level that I think is appropriate for me. Let's see what else. So think about other stuff you want to put in there, other skills, credentials. Some people are putting past companies, and that works really well if you have a past company that's kind of a flagship, right? So if you say, I'm a design leader, I do X, Y, Z, past companies, blah, 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 and it's a bunch of companies no one's ever heard of, it's probably not going to help you much, right? It's like, who cares? But if you are proud of a past company, like, yeah, I worked at Meta, or I worked at Microsoft, or I worked at LinkedIn, or Twitter, or Apple, or whatever, and you know that attracts people, that can help. So you may want to put that. Let me keep going so we don't run out of time. Double check your current position. So it will show what is your current position. Some people forget to update it and it lags so far behind. And then they wonder why recruiters are contacting them about IC level positions. Like, why are you asking me to be an entry level designer? It's like, oh, I hadn't updated my current position. So everybody still thinks I'm an entry level designer. So just make sure that that's updated the way you want it to be. Contact info. I don't know why people leave this empty. I mean, maybe because they're afraid of spam. I don't know. Or they lock it down. So many people have nothing in there but the link to their LinkedIn profile, which is kind of funny. It's a little recursive. And I guess that's by default. LinkedIn puts in your LinkedIn profile link and they have nothing else. You can add your email address, your phone number if you want to. It's up to you. You can even do a physical mailing address. Be careful with that. Do you really want people knowing where you live? You can add multiple website URLs. So that's super important. So I have my business website. I have all my newsletters and blogs. You can add instant messaging, your Twitter handle, and all that kind of stuff too. I don't know why you wouldn't want to have as many relevant contact information pieces as you can, because you're trying to get people to reach out to you. I mean, if you're looking for a job or you're looking to get hired as a consultant or whatever it might be, have that information in there so that people can find you, so they can contact you. So I think that's super important. The thing that's also very useful, which people may not have noticed, is you can actually put a website that puts a link right at the top of your profile. So if you look at my profile, you'll notice I have my Invincible Career link showing up right there on the page. It's not buried under contact info. So that's super helpful. And I recommend this for everyone. I don't care what platform you're using, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, whatever your platform of choice is, guide people to a property you own. That's what this whole past month about websites was, is like, you should have your own website. It's what having a newsletter is all about. You do not want everybody to only know you and contact you and find you through LinkedIn. As much as you possibly can, try to get people to something you own and build an audience and build a following. Build more SEO love for your website. If more people are clicking through your website, it's going to get ranked better in search results. So as much as possible, get people off the top of the funnel, which is what these all are. All the social media and LinkedIn, all that stuff is top of the funnel. It should not be your home. Should not be your home. Because you want to take people from that and guide them into a place where you can control the experience and it's all about you, which is fantastic. And you can control having access to that list, which is what a newsletter is all about. I have my email list on my newsletter. I can contact everyone on that list. I can take that and move it to another provider. It's mine. Try to do that with your LinkedIn connections. You can't. You can export it, but if people, and most people, have hidden their contact information so their email doesn't show up, you have no way to contact those people. That's changed in the last few years. It used to be you would download it and you had all the email addresses. You're like, it was wonderful. Not anymore. I did it recently, and I think maybe 7 to 8% of the people had included their email address and let it be exported so that I could see their email address. Most of my list that I downloaded from LinkedIn, thousands of people, is inaccessible. I can't contact those people. I'd have to go use some other tool and scrape and dig and try to figure out how to get in touch with them again. So if I ever leave LinkedIn, or LinkedIn shuts down, gets acquired by yet another company, or something happens, it's all gone. It's all gone. So as much as possible, get people off these properties and into a place that you own and where you can get their name and their email and stuff like that. The open to work thing, this is a little controversial. I have a weird feeling about this. It's a little different in recent times. So When this first came out, everybody was jumping on open to work and putting it, and it shows up on your profile as a badge and all that stuff. And to me, it always looked a little bit like when people broadcast, oh, I just got fired and I need a job. Like, why'd you get fired? Why are you out of work? And I can tell you behind closed doors on the other side of the table, hiring managers and recruiters love candidates that are passive candidates. They want people that are already working, and they want people that are in demand. When people are not working, when they're out of work and they're saying, oh, I'm trying to find a job, I'm out of work, they would say, I'm not going to name any names, obviously. Uh-oh, what's wrong with that person? Why don't they have a job? Why did they get fired? Why did they get laid off? So I have mixed feelings about open to work. You can set it to say, I only want this visible to recruiters, which I think is probably a nice compromise. So the average person that sees your profile will not see that you're open to work, which is probably great also if you're already employed and don't want your boss to know you're looking for a job. So you can say, don't show that, only show it to recruiters. And so you can turn that setting on. I've used it to attract consulting opportunities. And so I'm very clear. You can be very specific about what you want. I said, I only want to do like an acting head of product or head of design role. I'm only going to work remotely. I don't want to be an employee. So that's how you could contact me. So it's clear. It's like, I don't want a job, but if you are looking for somebody to help you with consulting, I can do that because I do that as part of my business too. I consult with companies. You can also, if you have services, you can have a section called providing services. You can get more detailed about that and put your services in there. Your about section, I want to jump into that. So your about section can be huge. I don't know if people realize it. It can have up to 2,600 characters in it. And most people will use very little of it. They have like 1 or 2 paragraphs. This should be, again, kind of where you're thinking about your about. It's just like the page. It's like stack rank stuff. So the most important stuff's at the top of your about. And that should be your elevator pitch. Like, who am I? What do I do? What are my key achievements? How do I want to call out the highlights of my career? So especially if you've been working for 10, 20, 30 years, no one wants to read your entire life story. They want to see the highlights. These are the key things I've achieved, things I've accomplished, things I'm most proud of, reasons why you should call me, reasons why you should hire me. Use a personal tone of voice and speak in the first person. So this is where people also trip up. And I used to too. A lot of people use third person. Like, John is this and he did that and he did that. That's okay when that's on a site where you really don't control the profile. So that's obviously happens like on bio pages when people are speaking at conferences and stuff like that. It's not going to say I, because they're going to have 50 people using I language. You're not on a page like that, and you don't control it. You can't go in and edit it every day if you wanted to. But this is yours. This is your profile. Just like you would have in your bio on your website, it should say I, not he or she or they, right? Because it's yours and you can update it every day. You can make changes to it. So use the first person tone of voice when you're doing this. You can also select your top 5 skills to feature, which is a fairly new feature they've added. In the end, I test it with a few friends. So trusted colleagues, friends, the career community, my Invincible Career community. Say, okay, I just rewrote my about. What do you guys think? Is it clear who I am? Is it clear what I do? Do I seem like somebody you would want to contact for the type of job I'm looking for? Am I the kind of person you'd want to contact for the type of consulting work I do? Or is it confusing? I mean, it's a sales page. Your about is a little mini sales page within a sales page. So is it clear? Do people know what you do? Would somebody want to talk to you? And like all this stuff, I think it's good to test. I think it's good to ask people, what do you think if you read this? I know we're almost out of time. You can have a featured section. So you can put like articles, you can have posts in there, your newsletter, links to stuff, media. It's a great thing to do. I think it shows like 2 to 3 at the most. It scrolls, but it's in a nice slideshow format. So it's a really rich format. So you can use this to drive people to your latest newsletter or to something that you just wrote and published that you think is going to be interesting for people. So I'd make use of that. Activity. So your activity feed, I don't know if you've noticed, it shows, you can see your own, but you definitely see it with other people. So this is showing things that you've posted, things you've liked, comments you've made, and articles you've written. So many people have a very dead activity area. Some people have 0 in there because they haven't touched it in years. Other people, it's like they touch it once a month or maybe once a week at the most, which is not too bad for LinkedIn. But if you are active every day, like you just schedule a little bit of time, like you're having your morning coffee or tea and you say, I'm going to spend 15 minutes on LinkedIn. And I know the most impactful people I should engage with, who are the industry leaders, they're influential, they get lots of engagement, lots of people look at their stuff. If you're in UX, Jared Spool's pretty active on there. It's like, go in, engage, talk with these people. It will show up now, and you will show up more often, because what is the nature of these platforms? They want people to be active. They want engagement. So if you're active, they're going to reward you. If you're not active, they're going to punish you. And it's like, you will not show up as much in the feed for people. That's the nature of every platform. It's the nature of Instagram. It's the nature of Facebook. It's just the way it is. Twitter's the same way. If you post a lot, if you engage a lot, if you're a good community member, which they love, they will show your stuff to more people. And if that's what you want, then yeah, you should engage more often. You can even write articles. LinkedIn native articles get more engagement than just sharing a link to something else. Every platform also punishes you a little bit for sharing a link. It's just the way they are. Briefly, Twitter, he wasn't even allowing you to have links. Because Mr. Musk was like, I don't want people leaving Twitter, so if you share a link, I'm not going to let you do that. Anyway, so they will not get ranked as well in the feed as something that's like, oh, I have some information and here's some highlights. And then in the comments, you can say, oh, if you want to read more about this, it's in the comments, right? So you can put a link in the comments. It's a trade-off. You'll get seen more often. You'll get less probably CTR than you would if it was the first link in the article or in the post. So I know Justin Welsh talks about this too. He's like, yeah, I sometimes just share the link in the post because I don't get as many impressions. It won't be seen by as many people, but I get more engagement. I get more clicks. So it's a trade-off I'm willing to make. So you have to decide. You can do a mix and mess with that too. And then it looks like we're almost out of time. Experience, much like your resume, just highlight the achievements, focus on accomplishments, front load your bullets with numbers as much as possible. So if you have revenue you've driven, an increase in conversion you've driven, number of customers you made possible for a client, whatever it is, try to front load that so it's easy to scan, and people love numbers. They love percentages. They love stuff like that. And then the rest of the page, I'm not going to get into it, are skills and endorsements. I will say something about recommendations. Recommendations are important. So the one thing that I often look at, and I know other people do too, is the recommendations. Like, do people talk about you? Do they write about you? Do they say good things about you? And do you give recommendations too? Is it a relationship where you're giving as well as receiving? Most people have very few recommendations. Some people have 0 recommendations. I don't think it looks good, because I think it's the one thing that can make you stand apart. A lot of people are competing head to head with 4 or 5 other candidates that are kind of similar in terms of their experience and the companies they've worked at. And what could tip you over the edge is having some recommendations from people's names they recognize, like, oh my gosh, you worked with that person, and them saying glowing things about you, about what you do. It's a testimonial. It's social proof. And we all know social proof and testimonials work. People who create sales pages, there's a reason they do that. The reason Amazon has reviews. There's a reason Yelp has reviews. Testimonials from real people work. So don't be shy about asking. I know it feels weird sometimes. I'm past it feeling weird. I ask every client for a testimonial. I went back and asked a manager from 30 years ago for a testimonial, and he wrote it from 30 years ago, because LinkedIn didn't exist 30 years ago. So I couldn't have asked him at the time. And he's like, oh, I'm happy to do that, because it felt weird for me not to have anything about IBM, which was like over 30 years ago. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll write something for you. I was like, cool, man, that's fantastic. It's like, people are usually more than happy if you had a good working relationship with them to write something for you. So highly recommend it. Take every testimonial you get and copy it to your own website. So I have a gigantic testimonial page on my website that's just a scrolling list of all my testimonials, some from LinkedIn, some from other places. Because what happens if LinkedIn has a data corruption problem? What happens? What happens if they shut down? they shut down so quickly, I can't get my data out of it. And I know young people don't think that can happen. Those of us around during the dot-com crash saw that happen. We saw stuff that we used and blogged and posted on disappear overnight. Gone. Years of work gone. And so I've gotten into the habit of exporting all my data. I've gotten into the habit of copying my testimonials and putting them on my own website, again, because I'd rather have people go read my testimonials on my website than go to LinkedIn. You should too, because you own that and the singular focus will be on you. So if someone says, oh, I want to hear more about the kind of work you do you have clients who are happy with you? I wouldn't send them to LinkedIn, because now they're there and they're like, oh, there's 5 other people that do what this guy does. I should check them out too. Whereas if they go to your website, it's all you all the time. And it's your full page of testimonials. You can design it. You can make it elegant. You can make it beautiful. You can have bigger photos. You can do whatever you want. And now it's on your website, which is fantastic. And so more of the SEO love goes to your website too. There are some people in my testimonials that are pretty well known and people search for their names all the time. And I can see traffic coming to my website because they're searching for that person. It's kind of nice. It's like, great. You searched for them and you landed on my website because they wrote a testimonial for me. It's all good for me. I'm happy about that. All right. That was a lot in an hour. Like I said, I recorded this. We'll save it out, share it, and then they'll be in the podcast. It'll be in YouTube as well. But thanks for joining, guys. I really appreciate that. And hopefully you got something, one little tidbit out of here that you can take away and improve your LinkedIn and improve some of the other stuff you're doing.
I got 3 of them.
Fantastic. There we go.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel. If there's one thing you can take away, I'm happy. That's fantastic. 3's even better.
Thanks so much.
All right. Good seeing you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
All righty. Bye.